So now let's turn to the 6 process principles. I'm calling them to distinguish them. The other one, those are the goals, the things that we need to get good at if we're going to become who we need to become. The process goals are the means by which we do that, because the fact is, as Presbyterians, we've got an outmoded old way that we're moving forward, and it's not going to work. We need something dramatically different. So the first part of the process, it says adaptation, not technical change. What we've been good at for the last 150 years as Presbyterians is making technical changes. That is, when there's a problem, then we find an expert. The expert comes in and tinkers with it and just adjusts it well enough that it works okay again. But we're at the point now that things have changed so much in the ministry context we find ourselves in that we need an adaptive approach. And there's some books out where they use that kind of terminology about adaptation rather than just technical change. But what adaptation means is that we have to look at a major overhaul, not just little tinkering around, but like majorly overhaul what we do. So that's the other 5 principles come out of this idea that we're in an adaptive context. So the other 5, a learning community. What we need to do is to be actually a learning community rather than finding an expert. What that means is we've checked some church consultants who come in acting like they're experts. We bought their books, we bought their binders, we paid them lots of money, and they didn't get us anywhere. And what we've come to understand is that in an adaptive context, in a context where things are changing on the ground and we're going to have to get good at changing, then we need to become the learning community. We're going to become the experts through our own experiments, through our own projects and pilot projects and all of this. And see, that's a very different approach for us as Presbyterians. We're not used to saying we may fail or we might not fail. What we're used to saying is we're going to put this together in the way that we always have, and it's going to succeed if we do it right. Now what we're saying is we're going to try pilot projects, and some are going to work and some aren't going to work, and we're going to learn from that. We're going to become the experts. So we're going to become a learning community. The next one is we act our way into being. What we're really good at as Presbyterians is committee meetings. And we talk and we talk and we talk and we produce papers and then we file them away. Well, the process in an adaptive environment needs to be turned on its head. And what we need to do instead is this experimentation, these pilot projects, and then figuring out who we need to be. So we don't start with committee meetings. We start with saying, for example, disciples discipling others. We need to get good at this. So let's start a pilot project on discipleship. Go. And then let's learn afterwards. Rather than having committee meetings and generating lots of files that say, here's what a disciple should be, here's how we're going to do it, and then putting it away in a filing cabinet, we're getting out there and it's action-oriented. Organize only when there is something to organize. Another thing we've done in the past is that we would prepare everything before we took our first step. So for example, with a new church development, we would buy the property, we would build the building, we would hire the pastor, then we would have the church plant. What we're doing now with church planting or new churches is that we're finding the leaders first. Then we're allowing them to discern where they gather their people, what region they're going to be in, how they're going to develop the church, and the building, the facility, all of that stuff is secondary, and they may never get a building. What we want to do is start with finding the church planters and training them, and that's how we learn what we need to do further in our organizational structure. So as a whole, as a presbytery, we have to get out there, do things, and then organize once we've learned from that. The last 2 are ones that I'm adding in this year because we're shifting into a team building mode. My job is more and more about team building now. And so action-oriented team ministry is what we want. Again, this is in contrast to committees based on volunteers that are gatekeepers. That's what we've done for many decades. Well, now what we're doing is not committees. We're building teams that are focused on action, on specific things that they have to do. That's why the team exists. They're not there to look over somebody's shoulders, to make sure they do everything right. They're there to get out there and get it done. Action-oriented team ministry. And those are the teams that I'm trying to form this year, kicking it off with the February 1 event. The last one, results-oriented leadership. That is where we are leaders who have a scoreboard, to use the Lions Pride language. We have never had a scoreboard. We don't have a scoreboard now. We don't know how to measure, because we're pretty sure that if we measured anything, we'd be doing horribly. It would all be red. We would tank. So we need to do a ton of work to get to the point that we even have a scoreboard. And so this principle of results-oriented leadership means that we're holding ourselves accountable to specific goals in the different 5 areas of the strategic direction. So all of these things are speaking into the 5 parts of the strategic direction. How are we going to return to our reformed roots? Well, through an adaptive process where we become a learning community, acting our way into being, organizing only when we need to organize, and building teams around those that are action-oriented and that have results that are focused on their scoreboard. So you could do that with each one of those 5 areas. So I hope that's helpful. I feel like I'm just opening up a big can of worms. It's going to be more confusing. So please, I'll be happy to explain more or do whatever I need to do. But that's that. Next, I'll talk to you about the flywheel part of it in the next video. Thanks.